such that life together always involves them in hurting one another in some way. People may want to disbelieve this, but even a brief exposure to real vulnerability will testify that it is so. In a desperate scramble to avoid this fact of life, people will remain distant and superficial with everyone. They will run to other churches, other groups at the first sign of differences. They will clam up in a tight little shell that does not know how to cry or laugh. Such a flight from reality is not life, but death. If we want life, we must be prepared to hurt and be hurt. We simply must make peace with this fact. Once we accept this as a true perception of life together, we can exert our energies toward learning how to deal with it rather than attempting to avoid it. Good afternoon and welcome to College Meeting for Worship. My name is Kelly Burke and I work in the Office of Religious Life. This semester, College Meeting for Worship has the theme of the burden of forgiveness. And so we've asked each speaker each week to address this theme. And one of the questions they might select from, how do you forgive? Is forgiveness always possible? How does your faith inform your understanding of forgiveness? And how can respect inspire forgiveness, or vice versa? We're excited to hear little Henry speak today. And we're glad you're here. Just a couple of announcements. You might note on the back of those announcements, but on Monday nights now, Bodhi House, which is the Buddhist-themed house on campus, Nikki lives there. They're doing laughing meditation every Monday night at 8 o'clock. So if you've never tried laughing meditation, I would highly encourage you to go. It's wonderful. And also this coming Friday, the Muslim Student Association is doing a day trip to Plainfield, Indiana, where it's the Islamic Society North America headquarters, and there's a mosque there. We'll be leaving at 9 a.m. and returning at 4 p.m. And anyone's welcome to go. You just need to let us know so that we have room in the van for you. So at this time, I invite you to settle in and open yourselves, your heart, and your mind to this hour of worship. Welcome.
Yeah, when I was only 17, I could hear angels whispering. So I drove into the woods and wandered aimlessly about until I heard my mother shouting through the fog. It turned out to be the howling of a dog, or a wolf to be exact. The sound sent shivers down my back, but I was drawn into the pack, and before long they allowed me to join in and sing their song. So from the cliffs and higher still, yeah, we would gladly get our fill, howling endlessly and shrilly at the dawn. And I lost the taste for judging right from wrong. For my flesh had turned to fur, yeah, my thoughts they surely were turned to instinct and obedience to God. You can wear your fur like a river on fire, but you better be sure if you're making God a lie. I'm a rattlesnake, babe, I'm like fuel on fire. So if you're gonna get me, don't be afraid of what you learn. On the day she wandered aimlessly, but she didn't seem to see. She was listening for the angels just like me. So I stood and looked about. I brushed the leaves off of my snout, and then I heard my mother shouting through the trees. You should have seen that girl go shaky at the knees. So I took her by the arm, we settled down on a farm and raised our children up as gently as we please. Now my fur has turned skin, and I'm in quickly ushered in to a world that I confess I do not know. But I still dream of running careless through the snow, through the howling winds of love, across the ancient distant flow, that fill our bodies up like water till we know. When you're fire, like a river on fire, but you better be sure if you're making God a liar. I'm a rattlesnake, babe, I'm like fuel on fire. So if you're gonna get made, don't be afraid of what you learn.
All Irons, and I'll be reading Jellyfish by Andrew Gibson. When the astronaut told me she needed more space, I dropped my pants in the floor of the grocery store, hoping I could moon her into staying. Most of us will do anything to try and prove we are enough, to prove our sunshine is no Hollywood, our stars are not just actors, to prove the twinkle in our eye isn't an infection. I can look in any direction and say, that's the way to go, but I've learned this is how to stay. Skipping moon rocks across my puddle dive, even when I've been clipped from the mothership, so I can still say, I bet you smell like butterfly. But I bet you dream cocoon, and I bet you never say the word fuck, but we all know you do. My heart is a runaway. I've been staring at the sky since my love took off. Will you be my friend? Will you poem me a porch swing? Will you punch me in the chuft just once? I'm ready to reset my bones, ready to swing set my rib cage. So the next time somebody pushes me away, I'll swing right back to that chisel with my marble spine. Go ahead, build me. Do you ever think about God's ears? Wonder if the levee broke her promise? Wonder if the wrecking ball was trying to run its fingers soft across the bricks, but its head was just too heavy? Before you become my friend, picnic with my rubble, road trip with everyone I left in the dust, do the laundry from the last time I was loaded. How she found my trigger and we woke with the sheets pulled above our heads, praying that the mortician would make us pretty. Y'all, none of us are pretty. But our ugly has an alibi, and our gorgeous has a sand collection, or two harmonicas we keep blowing off, or that flute we carve from our wrists. Put your lips here. Tell me there's music in my blood, and tell me there is more in my light. Hang me chandelier from the last night. I believed this life had to hurt so much. I'm done kneeling in the church of steepled smokestacks, done stargazing my own train crash. Give me wind sprints. Tell me my fingerprints are the shape of ripples on a frozen lake. Tell me my coal mine will never collapse on my heart. I'll tell you these poems. They are my birthmarks. And I came this close to having them removed once. Even kept that voice box cutter hidden in my shoe the day that flight took off. But the runway, it's made of marbles, made of gust, made of windmill, made of salt. And there is a sea of hope chest in every word I speak, praying to be opened by the night. With its belly full yield, pull the shield from my waistband. Teach me why the candle wax says thank you to the flame. Tell me how your mother says your name like an orchard going bloom. A doctor once told me I feel too much. I said, so does God. That's why you can see the Grand Canyon from the moon. We are a telescope, a riverbed. We are empty rockets melting in gold. We are hearts breaking bread. Fold me in your napkin poem. Pull the tinsel from my hair from all the past I cannot let go. My gills are adjusting to the air. The story has peeled from my bones. My bones know the song of our tears, dripping from the faucet, ticking like a metronome. I know there is better music. In this cabin full of fever. Tonight I'm catching nothing but the lightning bug. My body is a mason jar, transparent as a jellyfish. I wish for a heart we can see straight through, for a voice that glows in the dark, and a few really good friends to skip moon rocks to.
This is a passage from Aristotle's Politics, Book 1, Chapter 2. Man is by nature a political animal, for, as we assert, nature does nothing in vain, and man alone among the animals has speech. The voice indeed indicates the painful or pleasant, and hence is present in other animals as well. For their nature has come this far, that they have a perception of the painful and the pleasant, and indicate these things to each other. But speech serves to reveal the advantageous and the harmful, and hence also the just and the unjust. For it is particular to man, as compared to other animals, that he alone has a perception of good and bad, and just and unjust.
I've been friends with Will for the past 5 or so years, and if there is one thing that I've come to admire and appreciate about him, it's his incredible and truly enviable knack for befriending and forming genuine relationships with just about anyone. Will is one of those people that can walk into a room of complete strangers and within minutes have them all laughing and talking like close friends. Or he can just as comfortably sit down with someone he hardly knows and talk one-on-one for hours about the philosophy of science. Last year, while Will and I were traveling in Nicaragua, we became the proud fathers of a baby chick, who we named Joyce, after a Spirit Airlines representative we'd become friends with while stranded in the airport. As was true of the majority of our most spontaneous decisions, Joyce was Will's idea. And while I was hesitant at first, she quickly became a very important part of our trip. Joyce was an instant icebreaker and a loyal travel companion. Furthermore, as Will had explained, she would make a great present to give to the owners of the farm hostel we would soon be staying at. Upon arriving at the farm, Will quickly befriended one of the farmers and introduced them to Joyce. Through his remarkable ability to connect with people and communicate complex meaning with a relatively limited Spanish vocabulary, Will explained the bond he had formed with Joyce in his short time as her father and made the farmer promise to stay in touch if she accepted our gift. The farmer, who was obviously very amused and a little confused by the whole situation, happily accepted the present and promised to raise Joyce as her own. I feel the story and Joyce's short time journeying with us really exemplifies Will's unique ability to understand and connect with people on a profound level.
This past summer,
cry on, and the ability to turn the most uncomfortable situations into the best moments of your life. In these 8 weeks with him, I learned that even though Will is technically a biology major, his true calling is philosophy. He loves challenging hypocrisies and searching for deeper meaning. And I'd like to share a quick story that I think demonstrates the depths of Will's wisdom. We were eating lunch one day with another intern who was from Hong Kong, and her birthday was coming up. And so we asked her if she was excited to celebrate her birthday. And she made it very clear that she was not at all excited, and she didn't want to get any older. And I was really surprised by this, because she was only 22 years old. And she told us that there's a saying where she's from that says, "Men are like wine, but women are like milk," meaning that men get better with age and women have an expiration date. And the moment that followed this was very awkward, and I was very uncomfortable and had no idea how to respond to this. But out of this moment, Will explains, "I love cheese!" So with this simple phrase, he simultaneously flipped this obnoxious saying on his head and had everyone laughing.
It would be easy for us to go on and on with stories about the fascinating ideas Will has, the crazy adventures and endless number of people he has met and befriended along the way. But what we think makes him an exceptional person to speak on the subject of forgiveness and relationships is his unabashed honesty, his personal integrity, and his overall genuineness as an individual. We've seen break down social barriers, cause complete strangers to open up, and spark lasting and meaningful relationships. So, here's one.
I just want to start off by thanking everyone for coming. It means a lot to have such a rich community. Is interested in hearing you talk about something. It's fabulous. Kind of feels like this whole thing is like a large performance to the degree where each level is kind of building on the next. So hopefully I can do that as well. Also, I want to say thank you to Kelly. That quote you read was actually perfect. Just so spot on. I feel like you read it enough time before you did that. And just, I'd also like to hold a moment of silence really quick for the events that happened on Friday and the events that happened in the upcoming, or this previous week. When I miss you and Beirut and Paris. And I just want to say, kind of think about those webs of relationships that are all affected by these tragedies, and not only on the survivor sides, but also on the perpetrator sides. I think we're in for quite just a really traumatic thing has happened, and I feel like more traumatic things will happen to follow. So if you want to hold those people in the light, that'd be great. So, the title of my talk is Rifts and Bridges, the Challenges of Reconstructing Relationships. So hopefully we can play with that for a little while. And dig into that as well. So, It had been a normal day driving the shuttle for the CIL. I'd always make a point of trying to know every student who rides the shuttle. I listen especially hard for when they are talking about their day-to-day interests, and then go on to look up or read about that certain topic. I relish hearing someone talk about their passions and what drives them. Cultivating those spaces shows you care, or showing you care, is important to me, and I try to bring that with me every time I drive the shuttle. However, sometimes it leads to mixed responses. One day, after dropping off some students, I offered someone who I had a strong relationship with to move to the front so that we could chat about in our usual way, about farm-to-table restaurants or biology. But on that particular day, she was tired and said, "No, I think I'll stay back here." For some reason, I was a little taken aback. I felt slightly hurt. This was something so simple, but very meaningful. And on top of that, it was one of those more sensitive days, where when I didn't get enough sleep the night before, and many things were rubbing me the wrong way. This is not an isolated event. Every day, these little transgressions happen. They seem to just prick the skin, but never draw blood. To my understanding, we all go through these experiences, and one of the challenges in life is figuring out which are worth getting upset by and which ones you should just let go. After each conflict is resolved, I always ask myself, why was that a problem to begin with? And why did that bother me so much? Like I said, that day I felt pretty thin-skinned. But it felt like a break in our relationship. But it also felt like a break in our relationship. And it left me with a choice. Either I ignore it and let it fade, or try to get some sort of apology from the person so that I can forgive them. When thinking about this theme of forgiveness, I couldn't help but try to think of the process by which it happens. In the process of forgiveness, there seems to be 3 steps. First, there needs to be a transgression, a break, a rupture in relationship. This is followed by an apology, a process that shows the person recognizes the transgression and acknowledges it. And then the person who has transgressed forgives the person who did it. This is a basic framework of forgiveness, far from exact. However, it outlines an aspect of relationships that helps me to understand them on the whole. Relationships are about exchanges. It is a back and forth between distinct entities, islands of personalities separated by rifts of difference. Some of these rifts are wider than others and push people farther apart. These separations are not permanent. We do not drift around as lonely, isolated units floating through the cosmos. Instead, we are connecting to each other across these rifts with bridges of relationships. Every person you come into contact with, you develop a particular type of relationship. Of course, these bridges take on all different shapes and sizes and are built out of different materials. There are some bridges that are as big as highways, for example, between my mother and I. We are bound in hundreds of ways as parent-child, benefactor, benefiter, traveling companion, and many others. But that relationship is strong and enduring. Whereas the cashier at the grocery store and I share a toothpick bridge, and that we only talked about the weather, and I can't really remember what they look like. We go through life forming these bridges, and through time we build them up, and they erode when not maintained. However, they keep our islands connected to some sort of archipelago, united together. These bridges don't just appear when we open our eyes onto the world. Instead, they are built and can be destroyed by our own doing. The bridges are made out of interactions. These interactions order the way we live in community. A metaphor I like to use to explain this to students when first starting on the backpacking course is our interactions are like blocks or bricks. Every interaction represents a block, and the way you act in an interaction will determine where that block is placed. Through our wilderness trips, we need to build a house for our community, and each interaction represents one block in the house. How you determine to build the house will become apparent in how strong your community is. In many situations, students think that going backpack is like playing outside. And they forget they need to be nice to each other. They forget how stressful simple things can be when you haven't showered all week. Anyways, the reminder is that when it rains, and it will pour, where will you go for shelter if you have no community to turn to? If the structural integrity of your community is so bad due to so many poor interactions, then where do you turn when times get tough? This metaphor is easily transposed onto our analogy of bridges as relationships. They are constructed, brought together by natural interests to be in community, but purely constructed by our interactions, in the form of conversation and action. This is not a new idea. And in the quote that Nikki read from Aristotle's Politics, there are 2 parts that I want to further unpack. Let's start with a statement. For as we assert, nature does nothing in vain, and man alone among animals has speech. This summer, Brianna and I traveled to Thailand to work in a laboratory. We had little to no experience with Thai besides on an app on our cell phone, which we diligently promised each other to practice every day in the weeks leading up to the trip. But I don't think either of us really did. Once we arrived, it was hard to construct relationships that we both wanted. Many nights we would hang out with the security guard at the entrance of the building and try to learn Thai from him, while he tried to learn English from us. It was tough, especially for my tone-deaf ears. I still cannot tell the difference between ma, which I know mean horse, dog, and no. But I really can't tell the difference, at least not yet. Being that opened my eyes to the difficulty of forming relationships with people when they didn't share the same language. In retrospect, every other time I went abroad, I traveled to Latin America, and I speak enough Spanish to get around. But in Thailand, I wondered why I felt so alone and distraught for the first 3 weeks I was there. I was lost in my ignorance, until one night at a hostel, we were hanging out playing Super Jenga. And after I knocked over the 4-foot wooden tower, Brianna and I both began talking to this group of French scientists. We found out they were engineers working in a different lab in the south of Thailand, and we quickly hit it off with their crew. They invited us to go climbing with them the following day. I just loved listening to all of them speak. There was something fascinating and beautiful hearing English spoken with a French accent. For some reason, the direct cognates of words that seem to be commonly spoken in French are incredibly academic words, such as articulate, subjectivity, objectivity, and fatigue. The whole weekend was full of rich conversation. We talked politics, education, climbing, science, and all the classic liberal arts topics. During one of our conversations, we walked along the beach with our dirt bag climbing crew. And Sebastian, one of the engineers, said something along the lines, "When I cannot articulate myself, it is hard for you to know who I am." I was surprised by this, because their English was fantastic, and they used words to describe things which I had never even considered. I was a little confused and asked why. He responded, "Because words are the only way I can express what I am feeling. And I do not know the words in English to do that." I was shocked, and for some reason I had never seen words as a way to capture and then share exactly how you are feeling or thinking to another person. I don't know what I thought before, but in this beautiful moment I realized he was right. Words are there to allow someone to get a sense of your island, and you to get a sense of theirs in these back and forth exchanges. In Aristotle's quote, the word speech is translated from the word logos. The word is almost a mystery in the English language. There's no direct translation for it, followed by a rich history of interpretation. There is over 106 different translations, all of which contain different meaning. So there's some space for play, and therefore space to cultivate new meaning. Aristotle tells us about logos, or speech of man, in regards to the polis, which translates to city, or like Indianapolis. Many readings of that line from the politics. In many readings of that line from the politics, logos is not only communicating, but an internal drive to be together. It acts like a force that draws people to be in community. The follow-up question then is, why does the force need to push us to live together in community? Why is the hermit's lifestyle not in our nature? And Aristotle tells us the answer. In my experience with philosophy, this is a very rare event that a philosopher will just outright tell you why something happens. He says man or humans are political animals. This is a classic line that you may have found on quotes.com in a search for an epigraph to your freshman politics paper. But when Aristotle says political, he doesn't mean your G.W. Bushes or your Barack Obamas. He means something else, something that is not privileged in our individualized society. The term politics for Aristotle means, as Kevin Miles puts it, for the Greeks, the political was a way to be constituted in relation. That doesn't immediately help us, but we think of being constituted as being bound by relationships, like the boundaries of our island. An example of this is when you go to Thanksgiving at your significant other's house. Before you even get there, you know that there is a role you must fill. You need to be polite. You can't drink too much. You have to say smart things and laugh at everyone's jokes, stuff like that. You are bound by these expectations. You can't step outside of the box that they have already assigned to you. And if you do, you won't have such a good time planning your wedding. Although these feelings entrap you, it also makes you you. The only reason you are an island is because there are other islands out there, and that you are separate from, but also connected to them. If those islands weren't there, and my island was the only one, it wouldn't be an island, it would be a mainland. By being in a relation, we can see the difference between each other, and see what makes us unique and separate from the whole. Being constituted by relationships reminds me a great deal of Quaker funerals. That's also just like a weird thing to say. During my grandmother's funeral, we all sat in different benches, and after the pastor, who was from another sect of Christianity, but very supportive of Quaker values, gave a short message. He opened up the floor to the rest of the attendees. After a moment of silence, a waterfall effect happened, in which everyone, one after another, started telling stories about my grandmother. It was beautiful as people shared their relationships through tears and laughter. And we all told stories. We all told story after story. As we all told story after story, it became very apparent that she was in the room with us. That although her physical form was not there, she was. As everyone in the room described some part of the bridge that they had built to my grandmother's island, it became very apparent where she fit in the community, and it revealed the constellation of islands that surrounded her. The bridges all spanned toward the space that she once physically filled. This is a unique moment when so many of my grandmother's friends were all in the same room together. We could see the connections that united all of us through our relationship with her. It also made me reconsider the way I think about relationships on the whole. No one is ever just an island to you, or only one sole interaction. Instead, they are a conglomeration of memories, patterns, that we think give us the ability to predict who that person is and what they're going to do. We are always looking at a person across the bridge that unites us. And we always see them through the lens of previous experiences. To me, this is why the hardest interactions are when you first meet someone, who you have no previous connection to. Our relationships are made out of these bridges of interactions, filled with language and expressions of who we are. These experiences help us build a bridge across differences. However, they make us recognize we are different, and so we may constitute who we are. To take this full circle, I want to propose something different than either ignoring or forgiving the transgression. I want to consider if it was a transgression to begin with. I think it's important to look to the fundamentals of relationships. Think about your bridges to that person and how it is constructed. Reflect how strong it was before. And then think about and listen for the context of the supposed transgression. After I dropped off the shuttle passenger, I just sat there, trying not to ignore the incident or view it as an insult, where I would expect an apology. Instead, I just sat with it. I trusted in our friendship and the bridge between us. When I came to pick her up from the site, I asked how her week was going, and she told me how she had stayed up really late the night before and was tired. She went on to say how the nap she took in the back seat really helped her stay awake while volunteering. This additional context reshaped our initial interaction. How could I feel hurt by someone seeking out sleep, which is so important to me? By trusting in the relationship, and after waiting for the context to appear, it was clear that there wasn't really a conflict to begin with. This is a form of empathizing, but I think it goes beyond that. People need to believe in the power of language to reveal or uncover, as Aristotle says. We need to trust in dialogue and conversation to see if someone was even transgressing to begin with, before we can assume that the person needs to apologize or we have to ignore it. In our individualized society, it's very common that transgressions go unaddressed because you do not need anyone else but yourself, or become large issues because how could someone wrong you? However, this does not need to be the case. By living into our relationships and utilizing speech, we can solve our problems by nullifying it as a problem. By emphasizing and making space for dialogue, the burden of forgiveness is lifted off our backs. We are left with just another interaction, and a block that will continue to build and reinforce our relationships. If we want to exist in a relationship, then we have to trust in words. We have to believe that a person is saying and trying to understand what they are expressing. I hope people leave this meeting for worship with a desire to build new bridges and repair old ones. Instead of thinking that a deed done to you will ruin a friendship, I encourage you to seek out the person's truth. Create space for them to express themselves and give context to their experience. By focusing on relationships, we not only live lives with less conflict, but we also constitute ourselves as personalities. We see the vast array of connections that bring us all together in a constellation, a beautiful body that allows each of us to shine brightly in our own unique way.
which is that you